Marcus Hayes was a devoted 28-year-old Chief Warrant Officer 4 who believed in honor, loyalty, and duty. He wasn't the most outgoing soldier at Fort Carson, but his reputation came from his integrity and unwavering commitment. His wife, Diane, the same age as him, was the opposite. Vibrant, adventurous, and unafraid to take risks. Their contrasting personalities somehow worked perfectly, and for the past 3 years of marriage, they had been the model military couple. To Marcus, Diane was his anchor. She was his high school sweetheart, his confidant, and his best friend. He doted on her endlessly, doing everything he could to make her happy despite the demands of military life. Whenever she wanted to try something new or go somewhere exciting during his leave, Marcus was there, ready to make her dreams come true. He loved her with a kind of devotion that many would envy. Diane loved Marcus too, or at least she thought she did. He was dependable, honorable, and cared for her in a way no one else had. But deep inside, Diane felt a growing restlessness. She craved excitement, unpredictability, and the thrill of pushing boundaries. While Marcus was a stable force in her life, he didn't satisfy her growing need for adventure, especially when it came to intimacy. Over time, Diane began to feel like their relationship had become routine. Marcus's affection, once endearing, started to feel suffocating. She wanted more, something wild and unrestrained, something Marcus could never give her. These thoughts haunted her, though she never expressed them to him. One Friday evening, Fort Carson announced a grand celebration at the NCO Club to honor recent promotions and the end of a successful field exercise. It was the kind of event everyone looked forward to. Loud music, free drinks, and a chance to let loose. Marcus and Diane were no exception. Diane in particular was excited. She spent hours picking out the perfect outfit, a short black dress that accentuated her curves. Marcus, ever the supportive husband, complimented her endlessly as they got ready together at their base housing apartment. "You look stunning," he said, his eyes full of admiration. Diane smiled, but there was something distant in her expression. "Thanks, babe. Let's make tonight unforgettable." As they arrived at the NCO Club, the atmosphere was electric. The music boomed. Soldiers danced with wild abandon, and the drinks flowed freely. Marcus and Diane stuck together at first, mingling with fellow soldiers and their spouses and enjoying the night. Marcus, always attentive, made sure Diane had everything she needed. A drink in her hand, a seat when she got tired, and his undivided attention. But Diane's mind was elsewhere. She noticed Marcus's 6 close friends: Staff Sergeant Tyler Reed, Sergeant First Class Brandon Cole, Sergeant Major David Warren, Master Sergeant Lucas Grant, Sergeant First Class Connor Mills, and Chief Warrant Officer 3 Jake Foster, hanging out near the bar. She had always been friendly with them, but tonight she felt a strange pull toward them. They were rowdy, confident, and exuded the kind of raw energy she found intoxicating. As the night went on, Diane's thoughts became darker and more reckless. A dangerous idea began to form in her mind, a fantasy she had entertained in secret but never dared to act on. She had always been curious about the thrill of being with multiple people. And tonight, surrounded by alcohol and adrenaline, the temptation was too strong to resist. Diane began to flirt subtly with Marcus's friends, catching their eyes and smiling in a way that left little to the imagination. They noticed, of course, exchanging knowing glances and grins. Marcus, oblivious to what was happening, continued to chat with his fellow soldiers, his back turned to the silent game Diane was playing. Finally, Diane decided to act. She leaned close to Marcus and whispered, "I'm going to the bathroom with Sarah to fix my makeup. We might take a while, so don't worry." Marcus, trusting her completely, nodded and said, "Take your time. I'll be here." Diane walked away, her heart racing, not with guilt, but with anticipation. She made her way to the bathroom where she had already agreed to meet Tyler, the first of Marcus's friends. She texted the others to wait nearby and join her one by one. Tyler arrived first, slipping into the bathroom with a cocky grin. Diane's heart pounded as she let herself go, giving in to her darkest desires. It was quick and impersonal, just as she wanted. As soon as Tyler was done, he left and Brandon entered. One by one, Marcus's 6 friends took their turn, each encounter more surreal than the last. Diane felt a strange mix of power and detachment, as though she were watching herself from outside her body. This wasn't about love or connection. It was about fulfilling a fantasy she had kept buried for far too long. Meanwhile, Marcus remained at the party, sipping his beer and chatting with fellow soldiers. Occasionally, he glanced toward the hallway, wondering why Diane and Sarah were taking so long. He also noticed that his 6 friends were nowhere to be seen, but he didn't think much of it. After all, it was a big party, and people were constantly coming and going. When Diane finally returned, she looked as composed as ever. Her makeup was flawless, her dress perfectly adjusted, and her smile warm and reassuring. She walked up to Marcus, wrapped her arms around him, and said, "Missed me?" "Always," Marcus replied, pulling her close. The rest of the night passed uneventfully. Diane acted as though nothing had happened, laughing and dancing with Marcus as if they were the perfect couple. Marcus, oblivious to the betrayal, felt like the luckiest man in the world. When the party ended, Diane suggested staying over at Marcus's base housing apartment, as she often did. He agreed, happy to spend more time with her. They walked home together, hand in hand, under the soft glow of the streetlights. Back at the apartment, Marcus made her a cup of tea before they went to bed. As they lay next to each other, he held her close, his heart full of love. Diane, however, stared at the ceiling, her mind replaying the events of the night. She felt no guilt, only a strange sense of satisfaction. For her, it had been an unforgettable experience. Exactly what she had wanted. For Marcus, it was just another ordinary night with the woman he loved. Neither of them could have guessed how quickly their world was about to unravel. The next morning dawned like any other. Sunlight filtered through the curtains of Marcus's small base housing apartment, casting soft golden rays over the room. Diane stirred under the covers, still deep in sleep, while Marcus was already awake, quietly admiring her. He often spent his mornings like this, marveling at how lucky he was to have her in his life. She looked so peaceful, her chest rising and falling gently, her hair spread messily across the pillow. To Marcus, she was perfect, a vision of beauty and everything he'd ever wanted. Despite his quiet admiration, he couldn't shake a lingering sense of unease. Something about last night felt off, but he quickly dismissed the thought. Diane loved him, and that was all that mattered. As Marcus got out of bed and began preparing breakfast, his phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. At first he ignored it, focused on frying eggs and making coffee. But when it buzzed again and again, he frowned and picked it up. The screen displayed a notification from an anonymous email account. The subject line read, "You need to see this." Curiosity piqued, Marcus opened the email. What he saw made his heart stop. Attached were several video files, each labeled with a single name: Tyler, Brandon, David, Lucas, Connor, and Jake. Beneath the attachments, a short message read, "You deserve to know the truth. Last night, while you waited for her, this is what she was doing. Your friends betrayed you, and so did she. These videos are already out there. Everyone knows." For a moment, Marcus stood frozen, his mind struggling to process what he was reading. His hands trembled as he tapped on the first video. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. It showed Diane in the Enzio Club bathroom, pressed against the wall, her dress hiked up as she kissed Tyler. Marcus's stomach churned as he watched them move together, the sounds of their encounter ringing in his ears like a death knell. He quickly shut the video, his chest tightening with panic, but something compelled him to open the next one, and then the next. Each video told the same story. Diane with one of his friends, one after the other, their faces unmistakable, their actions unforgivable. By the time he reached the final video, Marcus felt like he couldn't breathe. His chest heaved with shallow breaths, his vision blurred with tears. He stumbled back, gripping the edge of the counter for support. "This can't be real," he whispered to himself. "It has to be fake. It has to be." But deep down, he knew it wasn't. The details were too specific, the footage too damning. He replayed the events of the previous night in his mind. Diane's flirtatious behavior, her sudden disappearance, the prolonged absence of his friends. It all added up, and the realization hit him like a freight train. Diane had betrayed him. Marcus's thoughts raced as a storm of emotions consumed him. Anger, heartbreak, humiliation. He felt like a fool, an idiot who had trusted her and his so-called brothers in arms without question. The videos weren't just a betrayal of their marriage, they were a public humiliation, an open wound for everyone at Fort Carson to see. He turned to look at Diane still asleep in his bed, her face serene and untouched by guilt. The sight of her, so peaceful, so oblivious, made his blood boil. How could she lie there so calmly after what she had done? How could she destroy him and act like nothing had happened? Marcus's hand tightened around his phone as a dark thought crept into his mind. For the first time in his military career, a career built on discipline and control, he felt the stirrings of something dangerous, something violent. But he shook his head, trying to push the thought away. Instead, he paced the apartment, running his hands through his hair and muttering to himself. He didn't know what to do. Part of him wanted to confront Diane immediately, to wake her up and demand answers. Another part of him wanted to run, to leave the apartment, leave the base, leave everything behind. As he struggled with his emotions, his phone buzzed again. It was another email, this time from an unknown sender. It's everywhere now. They leaked it to the group chats. Everyone at Carson has seen it. Marcus's heart sank further. His humiliation wasn't just private, it was public. His fellow soldiers, his commanding officers, his entire unit, they all knew. He imagined the whispers, the stares, the cruel laughter. The thought made his skin crawl. He glanced at Diane again, his mind replaying the words from the email. She betrayed you. With trembling hands, he opened one of the videos again, forcing himself to watch. The more he saw, the angrier he became. Each frame was a dagger to his heart, each sound a reminder of her betrayal. By the time he closed the video, his anger had turned into a seething rage. Marcus couldn't contain himself any longer. He marched to the bedroom, his footsteps heavy and deliberate. He stood over Diane, his shadow falling across her face. She stirred slightly but didn't wake. "Diane," he said, his voice low and trembling with fury. She opened her eyes, blinking sleepily. "Marcus, what's wrong?" He didn't answer. Instead, he shoved the phone in her face, the video still playing. Her eyes widened as she realized what he was showing her. She sat up quickly, her face pale. "Where did you get this?" she stammered. "That's all you have to say?" Marcus spat. "You're not even going to deny it?" Diane's lips parted, but no words came out. She looked away, her guilt written all over her face. "You did this," Marcus said, his voice cracking with emotion. "With my friends. You lied to me. You told me you were going to the bathroom with Sarah, and then you... I'm sorry," Diane whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this. I was drunk. And it was just a stupid mistake." "A mistake?" Marcus's voice rose. "You call that a mistake?" 6 times, Diane. 6 of my closest friends. Was I not enough for you?" Diane looked at him helplessly, her tears spilling over. "I don't know what to say. I didn't want to hurt you, but I was bored, Marcus. I needed something different, something exciting." "Bored?" Marcus repeated, his voice shaking with disbelief. "You were bored, so you decided to humiliate me? To betray me in the worst way possible?" Diane sobbed, burying her face in her hands. "I didn't think it would get out. I didn't think anyone would find out." "Well, they did," Marcus said bitterly. "Everyone knows now. The entire base is laughing at me because of you." "I'm sorry," she cried. "I'll do anything to make it up to you." "Please, Marcus." "I didn't mean to hurt you." But her words fell on deaf ears. Marcus's heart was shattered, his trust broken beyond repair. The woman he had loved with all his heart had betrayed him, and nothing she could say or do would ever fix it. As he stood there, staring at the woman who had destroyed his world, a dark thought crossed his mind. A thought he couldn't ignore. Marcus's heart was pounding as he stared at Diane. His breath was shallow and his hands trembled with a mix of anger and disbelief. The woman he loved, the woman he had trusted with everything, was now the embodiment of his deepest betrayal. Her sobbing only fueled the storm inside him. Each tear a mockery of the pain she had inflicted. As she sat on the edge of the bed, tears streaming down her face, Diane repeated her apologies. "I didn't mean for this to happen, Marcus. I didn't think it would hurt you this much. I thought it was just a moment. It didn't mean anything." Those words struck him like a hammer. It didn't mean anything to her. Their marriage, his service, his sacrifice, all disposable. He clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms so hard that they left marks. Marcus's voice was low, almost a whisper, but the intensity in it was chilling. "Didn't mean anything. 6 people, Diane. 6 of my brothers. You planned this. You went out of your way to destroy everything we had. Don't you dare say it didn't mean anything." Diane flinched at the venom in his words, but managed to meet his eyes. "I didn't destroy us, Marcus. You're overreacting. People make mistakes." That was it. The casual way she dismissed her actions broke something inside him. Marcus stood there for a moment, silent and still. Then he turned, walking slowly into the kitchen. Diane's sobs began to quiet as she watched him leave the room, assuming he needed space to cool off. She didn't move from the bed, too consumed by guilt and regret to follow him. She thought he would eventually return and yell at her some more before storming out. She had no idea what was coming. In the kitchen, Marcus opened a drawer and stared down at the collection of knives inside. His mind raced with thoughts he couldn't control. Images of Diane with his friends, the laughter of his fellow soldiers when they saw the leaked videos, the endless whispers behind his back at Fort Carson. His life was ruined, and she was the reason why. He reached out and grabbed a large combat knife, a K-bar he'd received during his first deployment, the coal steel heavy in his hand. For a moment, he just stood there, staring at it, his reflection distorted on the blade. She doesn't deserve this. She doesn't deserve to live after what she's done. The thought repeated in his mind, louder and louder until it drowned out everything else. Marcus walked back to the bedroom, the knife hidden behind his back. Diane was still sitting on the bed, her face buried in her hands. She looked up when she heard his footsteps, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Marcus," she began, her voice trembling. "I know you're hurt. I know I've done something terrible, but please, let's talk about this. We can fix it." He didn't respond. He stood there, staring at her, his expression unreadable. "Say something," she pleaded. Finally, he spoke, his voice eerily calm. "Fix it? You think we can fix this? You think there's anything left to fix?" Diane's eyes darted to his hands, noticing the knife for the first time. Her breath hitched as fear began to creep into her expression. "Marcus?" she said slowly, her voice shaky. "What are you doing?" He took a step closer, his grip on the knife tightening. "You destroyed me, Diane. You tore my life apart. Do you even understand what you've done?" Her eyes widened as she scrambled backward on the bed. "Please, Marcus, put the knife down. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you like this." "Sorry?" he repeated, his voice rising. "You think sorry is enough? You think I can just forget what you did?" He lunged forward, slashing at her arm. Blood spattered across the sheets as Diane screamed, clutching her wounded arm and trying to crawl away. "Marcus, stop. Please," she sobbed, her voice breaking. "I'll do anything. Don't do this." But her pleas fell on deaf ears. The betrayal, the humiliation, the anger, it all consumed him. He raised the knife again, stabbing her in the shoulder. Diane screamed louder, her cries echoing through the base housing apartment. "You destroyed me," Marcus shouted, his voice trembling with rage. You made me a joke. You turned my life into hell." Diane tried to fight back, grabbing at his arms, but he was too strong, trained by years of military service. He stabbed her again and again, each thrust fueled by his pain and anger. Blood soaked the bed, the metallic smell filling the room. "I loved you," he screamed. "I would have done anything for you, and this is how you repay me?" Diane's struggles grew weaker as her body began to give out. Her voice was barely a whisper now, her words incoherent. Tears streamed down her face as she looked up at him, her eyes filled with fear and regret. Marcus stopped breathing heavily, his chest heaving as he looked down at her. She was barely alive, her body covered in blood, her breathing shallow. For a moment he hesitated, the weight of what he had done crashing down on him. But then he thought of the videos, the betrayal, the laughter of his fellow soldiers. His anger flared again, and he raised the knife one final time. "This is for everything you've taken from me," he said, his voice cold. He drove the knife into her chest, and Diane's body went still. Marcus stood there for what felt like an eternity, staring at her lifeless body. The room was silent except for the sound of his ragged breathing. Blood covered his hands, the knife, the bed, everything. He dropped the knife, his hands trembling. The reality of what he had done began to sink in, and panic set in. He stumbled out of the bedroom, grabbing his phone and wallet. He had to leave, to get as far away from Fort Carson as possible. But as he walked out the door, leaving it ajar in his haste, he didn't notice the neighbor across the hall peeking out. The neighbor, a retired sergeant major who had heard the screams and seen the blood dripping under the door, immediately called the military police. Marcus didn't make it far. He was arrested by MPs 3 blocks away from base housing, still covered in blood. At the military police station, he confessed everything: the betrayal, the videos, the murder. His voice was cold and detached as he recounted the events, as though he were talking about someone else. "I wasn't going to stop," he admitted. "I was going to find my friends next. They deserve to pay for what they did too." His court-martial was swift. The evidence was overwhelming, and his confession sealed his fate. The military judge sentenced him to life in prison at the United States Disciplinary Barracks at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, without the possibility of parole. The news of Diane's brutal murder and the events leading up to it spread like wildfire through Fort Carson, the military community, and eventually the entire nation. For days, the media painted a grim picture of the tragedy. A devoted soldier pushed to the brink of insanity by betrayal, humiliation, and heartbreak. Others saw Marcus as nothing more than a cold-blooded killer who had brutally ended the life of a young woman, regardless of her mistakes. At the center of it all was the video that had ignited Marcus's rage. The footage, leaked anonymously, circulated on the internet before authorities could contain it. The 6 soldiers involved were publicly identified and court-martialed, their military careers destroyed, their names forever associated with the scandal. While Diane's actions were controversial, the betrayal by Marcus's closest friends, his brothers-in-arms, became a cautionary tale about honor, loyalty, and the devastating consequences when trust is shattered in the most unforgivable way.